Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
My partner and I were doing a routine night patrol when dispatch got in touch about a local 911 call. The caller had apparently asked for help before suddenly hanging up, and dispatch had forwarded it to the police to chase up. Since we were close to the area, my partner and I responded and headed towards the location given to us over radio. When we pulled up outside the house, all the lights were off and the place was quiet. My partner and I exchanged a glance as we climbed out of the car. We both had been on the force for some time and had developed a certain sort of intuition for things. Something immediately felt off. "You think it's a prank?" she asked, hefting a flashlight in her hands and switching it on. The shallow beam ran towards the house. Glinting off each window, I could see nothing inside but vacant darkness. "Maybe," I said. "Let's check it out, see what we can find." Although it was dark out, it wasn't late. I didn't see any reason for the lights to be off, unless nobody was home, or something strange was going on inside. Given the caller's single plea for help, I didn't want to discredit the latter. My partner led the way, her torch beam cutting through the tall strands of grass growing around the property. For a moment, as we were approaching the house, I thought I caught a flicker of movement in one of the upstairs windows. I drew my eyes towards it, alerting my partner to flash the torch against it, but there was nothing there. "See something?" "Maybe," I said. "Probably nothing." "Or the house might not be empty after all," she suggested. I nodded vaguely. Most it seemed like that of someone walking past, but it didn't sit right with me. We reached the front porch. My partner gave a firm rap of knuckles against the door. I inched over to one of the windows, peering inside. From what I could see, the room was in disarray. Pillows had been shredded and thrown on the floor, and a lampshade was lying on its side. Layers of dust coated each surface. "Evidence of a struggle," I reported to my partner. No answer. "What do you want to do?" "I think we should check it out," I said. "Try the back door." She nodded, and I reached for my own flashlight, switching it on. It flicked a few times before evening out. I circled around the perimeter, striding through the thick brown grass and almost stepping on the shattered remains of a beer bottle. As I reached the back door, I heard what sounded like a faint sound of a woman's cry coming from inside the house. Without thinking, I twisted the door handle and pushed through. Stepping inside, a wave of purified air washed over me. I fought back the urge to gag. The place smelled as though it hadn't been cleaned in a decade. Dust was thick in the air, and the whole house had a feeling of abandonment. "Hello, this is the police. Is anyone here?" I called, swinging my flashlight across the kitchen I had emerged into. Grime coated most surfaces, and plates of moldy food were stacked up on the sides. "Police, anyone here?" I made my way through the house, towards the front door where my partner was waiting. The torch gave out just as I stepped into the hallway. Darkness descended suddenly and rapidly, climbing over my feet. The air suddenly felt cold against my face. I cleared my throat in the silence, hitting the torch against my palm, and a small burst of light struggled free. In the moment between light and darkness, something moved across my periphery. Then the light went out again. It was only after that I realized that someone had walked past me, a face shining in the light of the torch. I twisted my head, squinting through the darkness. There was nobody there. I shook my head, rubbing my eyes. Maybe I was getting too old for this. "Everything okay?" My partner called through the front door, sounding concerned. Yeah, coming, I called back, leaving the flashlight off and hurrying to the front door, unlocking all the bolts. She gave me a look and a shrug, as if asking why I had let myself inside. I thought I heard someone in distress, but it seems empty, I said, the words sticking in my throat. But let's check upstairs just in case. Want to split up? She asked. My heart jumped. I shook my head. Torch is broken, I said quickly. And she quirked her brows. Scared of a little darkness? She responded. I rolled my eyes, but said nothing. What's that room? Sitting room, I said, following her inside. You're right. Looks like a struggle happened here, she muttered, crouching down to inspect the mess. It happened a while ago, though, judging by a layer of dust. And look at this blood. Peering at the spot on the carpet illuminated by her flashlight. A large red stain had sunk into the carpet, dried a muddy brown. Looks like it's been dry for a long time. Yeah, think this was a dud after all? I frowned. Maybe. But it doesn't make any sense. Why would someone ask for help and lead us to an empty house where something obviously happened? My partner said nothing for a moment. Dispatch traced the call, right? Yeah, by landline, I responded. Let's find the phone, she said with a nod. We found it in the hallway, on a side table, off to a hook. When I picked it up, it had no dial tone. Weird, I muttered, pressing one of the buttons. Still nothing. It's dead. Then who made the call, and how? I shook my head. A chill touched the back of my neck suddenly, the air growing cold. Like it did earlier, my partner's torch flickered. I don't like this, I admitted. My partner looked at me, her lips pursed. Neither do I, she said, but we still need to check the upstairs. I nodded, knowing she was right. What if someone really did need help? We climbed the stairs slowly, calling out for anybody to respond, but the house remained silent. We did an entire sweep of the upstairs, but found nothing. No more blood, no bodies, nobody who could have put in the call. As we walked down the stairs, we both stopped when it was clear that we heard something. You hear that? I asked her. I heard it, she responded. It sounded like a woman. Where did it come from? I signaled down below with my torch. We continued walking down the stairs, now taking extra precautions to keep noise to a minimum. As we reached the foot of the stairs, we stood still, both closely listening for any further sounds of distress. Is anyone here? I yelled out. It's the police! I looked at my partner, and we exchanged suspicious glances. Let's keep looking, she said. We surveyed the entire first floor, till she found a door, and yelled for me to come quickly. I think this goes down to the basement, she said, holding the door ajar. I grabbed the door and pulled it completely open, allowing me a clear view inside. I aimed my torch down and could see a stairway leading down to the basement, but was unable to see the foot of the stairs. We should go down there, she whispered to me. Should we maybe call for backup? I asked her, my voice cracking. For what? She asked. We don't even know if anyone's actually here. I leaned my head forward towards the basement before yelling, It's the police! Is anyone down there? My partner motioned her head towards the stairs as she began walking down. I followed closely behind, wiping the sweat from my hands on my uniform. Careful, she said, motioning towards openings in the broken stairway. Let's try and get out of here in one piece. We continued making our way down the stairs, carefully avoiding the holes in the steps. When we reached the bottom step, I aimed my flashlight to the right, observing my surroundings. I sneezed, sending a cloud of dust flying in all directions. Let's check it out quickly and get out of here, I told my partner. She nodded and motioned with her hands for us to split up as she walked in the opposite direction. Even with flashlights, the basement was pitch black and our visibility was severely limited. I continued to my right, wanting to quickly take inventory of this side of the basement, so I could rejoin my partner. There were several boxes on the ground, as well as several boxes stacked up quite high. Didn't look very secure, and it looked like any one of them might give way at any moment. I decided to steer clear. There really wasn't much else of note, except for a small area that was around the corner. As I slowly made my way to the area, I heard my partner say something, which I was barely able to register due to our distance apart. I turned my head back and asked her to repeat what she said. "Holy hell," I heard her say. I began to turn back to make my way over to her when I heard her talking to her radio, but as I got closer to her, I realized that her communication wasn't coming through the radio. As I took out my radio to see if there was something wrong with mine or hers, I began hearing her words a lot clearer. "Oh my God," I shrieked. I arrived at my partner's location to find a woman strapped down on a table, mostly naked. Her left leg was gone from her mid-thigh down, and it looked as if it had been torn off. Bone and muscle were all exposed, as blood covered the entire table. My partner was next to the woman's head, talking to her. While fiddling with her radio, I walked up to the woman from the other side of the table and examined the rest of her body with my torch. I could see that her right ear was also gone. The woman's face looked dirty, and she appeared to be going in and out of consciousness. I looked up at my partner. I could tell she was saying something, but I couldn't hear her words. I must have been in shock because, in that moment, I was unable to hear anything. After a couple of seconds, I was finally able to snap out of it. "Your phone!" she yelled. "Try your phone! I can't get a signal!" I got out my cell phone and tried calling 911. I quickly noticed the call wasn't able to go through. I'm not getting a signal either," I told her while stuttering. I'm gonna go try outside." "Hurry!" she yelled at me as she continued to try to get a response from the woman. I quickly ran up the stairs with my cell phone in one hand and my flashlight in the other. Towards the top of the stairs, my left leg went straight through a hole, causing me to drop both my flashlight and my phone under the stairway. I yelled out in pain as I could feel something jabbing into the side of my thigh. "What happened?" I heard my partner yell. "I'm okay," I yelled back. I immediately cursed myself for my own stupidity. "What's going on?" my partner yelled. "Please hurry. I don't think she's going to." My partner stopped mid-sentence and didn't say anything else. "Melissa?" I yelled out. "What did you say?" I heard no response. I tried pulling my leg out, but could only feel something digging deeper into my leg every time I tried. I felt around my leg, and it felt like a piece of wood had gone straight through my thigh. "Melissa!" I yelled once more. "Melissa, can you hear me?" I surveyed my surroundings, shrouded in darkness. The door to the basement was mostly closed, so almost no light was coming inside. The only thing I could make out was a small area of light down where my flashlight was shining, under the stairway. It was flickering on and off, absorbing the last little bit of energy from the batteries. Then I heard footsteps coming from down the stairs. "Melissa!" I yelled out. "Is that you? I'm stuck. I can't get my leg out." I heard the steps getting closer, but still heard no response from Melissa. "Melissa!" I yelled out once more, my voice now shaky. "I know, I'm an idiot. Can you help me get out of here?" As the sound was about a foot away from me, I extended my arm out behind me in order to touch whatever was there, but I felt nothing. I turned to look down at my leg and tried pulling it free once more. Just then, I felt a bite on the right side of my neck, followed by my entire body going limp. I don't know how much time had passed when I awoke. I felt dizzy and disoriented. As I started to regain my composure, I realized I was strapped down to a table, unable to move, except for my head. The room I was in was pitch black. I could only assume I was still in the basement. I thrusted my hips to each side, and I could tell my gun was no longer on me. "Who are you?" I yelled. "What do you want?" "John?" I heard Melissa whimper from my left. "Melissa, are you okay? Where are you?" I responded. "I can't move," she cried. "My legs and my arms are strapped down. I'm scared." I tried pulling out my arms and legs, but with no success. The straps were extremely tight. I lay there, thinking of my options. "Where are you, you psychopath?" I yelled out. Suddenly I heard a whimper coming from somewhere in the corner of the room. It almost sounded like a dog. I tensed up as I heard movement. "Oh God, don't touch me," I heard Melissa yell. "Keep your hands off me." Feeling helpless and unsure of what to do, I tried pleading with whoever was there. "If you let us go right now, I promise you won't." Suddenly I was cut off by a blood-curdling scream. Melissa was crying out in pain. Her cries echoed through the room. She screamed repeatedly, only stopping to catch her breath. "Leave her alone!" I yelled. "Leave her alone!" I closed my eyes and clenched my teeth as I realized that all I could do was lay there and hear my friend scream in agonizing pain. I didn't know what the sociopath was doing to her, but in the back of my mind, I had a pretty good idea. Based on what we saw of the woman's leg earlier, I was certain that this maniac was more than likely eating her alive. As I heard the pain in her voice, a pain that I had never heard before in my life, I selfishly began to think of how once this freak was done with her, I would be next. I continued to try and get out of my restraints, pulling and tugging with all my might. I shifted in all directions, letting instinct take over. I yelled out in frustration as it became more evident that my current situation was inescapable. After hearing my partner's screams for a minute on end, my body began to relax. As if giving up and accepting the inevitable, tears began to form in my eyes, and for a moment, everything felt entirely surreal. Almost as if I was having an out-of-body experience. My mind began to disassociate itself from its surroundings as a defense mechanism. Just then, I was startled by a gunshot. I looked to my left and saw the brightness of several shots being fired. I heard steps heading away from our direction. I presumed Melissa was the one firing, and she continued firing until the last bullet had been fired. "Melissa?" I yelled out. I could hear her writhing in pain. I heard movement coming from her direction, and then waiting impatiently for her reply. I heard a loud thump from her general direction. Then I heard Melissa on the ground, making her way towards me, expressing vivid pain with each breath. She reached my table and pulled herself up. "Oh, thank God," I yelled out. She quickly began to undo my straps. As soon as she undid the straps to my left hand, I began to undo the straps to my right hand, and then my feet. As soon as I was done, I reached towards my weapon, but was reminded that it was gone. Melissa handed me her gun. "Reload," she said, her voice shaky. I took her weapon and followed her instructions. I got off the table immediately, grabbing Melissa. Still unable to see her, so I put my hands on her right arm, and she let out a loud yelp. I realized I'd touched her wound. "Can you walk?" I asked her. "No," she said, almost crying. I put Melissa's left arm around my shoulder in order to help her walk. She was hopping on one leg, and I knew that bastard had done something to her leg as well. As we slowly walked in the direction that I could only assume was the way out, I held Melissa's gun in my hand, ready to fire at anything that moved. We reached a wall and walked alongside it until we reached a door. I kicked the door open and waited for a second until I was sure our path was clear. We walked through and kept going forward. In the distance I could see a light of some kind flickering. I suddenly knew where we were. We made our way towards the light, picking up our pace. As soon as we reached the stairs, I realized we would be left vulnerable to an attack on the stairs. "Hold on to me as tight as you can," I told Melissa. "We have to walk up these stairs quickly, but carefully." I handed back her gun as I used both my arms to help her up the stairs. I used my foot to feel for the holes and made her aware of which spots to avoid. Going up the steps, I was suddenly reminded of the sharp pain in my leg, but it was now an insignificant amount of pain. My adrenaline was providing me with the extra energy I needed to get out of this place alive. As it reached the middle of the stairway, Melissa began to slow down and began crying. "I can't," she said. "I can't. The bastard took my leg." I stood still, carefully holding Melissa in my arms, letting her take a moment to rest, unsure of how to respond. All I knew in that moment was I had to get her to safety. Suddenly, I heard the bottom step creak, as if someone was walking up the stairs. "We've got to go," I loudly whispered to Melissa. We continued walking up the stairs. Although I could tell Melissa was losing strength, I was having to use my own strength to pull her up more and more. The footsteps behind continued in a slow, steady pace. I knew we weren't walking up the stairs fast enough to outrun that thing, not at our current pace.
Give me the gun,
I whispered to Melissa as I stopped and extended out my arm. She extended out her arm, and I felt for the gun. I took her weapon and fired a couple of shots behind me in a moment of desperation. I was unable to see anything in the brief moments of light emanated from the weapons blast, but I did hear something stumble backwards, almost as if falling back a few steps. I handed Melissa the gun once more, as I used the last of my strength to pull us up the stairs until we finally reached the door. I felt a quick sense of relief as we walked into the hallway, but it didn't last long. I continued to pull us towards the front door. As we walked out of the front door of the house, I turned my head back to make sure we weren't being followed, and thankfully saw nothing. I didn't stop until we reached our patrol vehicle. I laid Melissa on the ground, getting a good look at her wounds for the first time. Chills ran down my spine as I saw the extent of her damage. Without a moment to waste, I got inside my car and radioed for help. I went back to my partner's side and stayed with her until she took her last breath. An ambulance got there shortly after and was able to resuscitate her, after which they took her straight to the hospital. When backup arrived, I gave them a quick update on the situation, and they quickly stormed the house. They found the woman's dead body and evidence to support my story, but whoever was responsible for these atrocities was gone. The woman would later be identified as your average suburban mother of 3 who lived an hour away from that location. There was nothing that tied her to this house or anything out of the ordinary. The house itself was foreclosed and was owned by the bank. The FBI soon took over the case, after which I stopped following the incident. But last I heard, they weren't very optimistic about the chances of finding that sociopath. Melissa retired after this event, and honestly, I don't blame her. After a few weeks off, I decided I was ready to go back to work. I only lasted a year. In the end, I can no longer deny that a career change was in my best interest. These days, my life is a lot less exciting, and I can honestly say I don't miss the adrenaline rush. I talk to Melissa on occasion and reminisce about our time in the force, but we've never actually spoken about that night. I think we're both just trying to pretend we've moved on from it. Occasionally, my mind takes me back to that night, and I'll quickly shrug it off. Melissa, on the other hand, I can only imagine, is reminded of it daily. Both her left leg and forearm had to be amputated, forever carrying a physical reminder. Tonight's story was written by Hair-Raising Narratives. If you enjoyed this story, chances are you'll enjoy the content over on his channel. He's a talented author and a fantastic friend of this channel. His links will be in the description below. Also, if you'd like to walk around representing my realm, gaining me new travelers, the links to my merch store will be in the description below. As always, I want to say a special thank you to my lovely Patreons. 242 Reads, Rando Calrissian, Pam, Seraphine the Midnight Bard, Creepy Clown Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Hair-Raising Narratives, and Spooky Boo's Scary Story Time. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers by the light of my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. The support is always appreciated, but never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, as it would really help push this video into the algorithm and help the channel grow.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.